Hi, and welcome to this episode of Between Two Teachers. I'm Madeline Kronenberg.
And I'm Consuelo Lara.
And this week, we opened with something new here on our set. It is this lovely graphic design that we're both wearing on the UTR shirt, the back of the shirt, and I love it. I love it. The United Teachers of Richmond gave them out to all of the teachers in the district, and I think it really does symbolize what we're trying to do here in terms of who a teacher is, somebody who is supportive and loving and hardworking and is a friend. And all of those words are there in that beautiful graphic. So we wanted to share that with you.
Yes, and you know what just reminded me of how people said just the intersection of art and union struggle, and how at Oakland,
Absolutely.
the art was amazing,
Right.
and it was so visual. It captured media attention. So
Totally did. And I
Yeah.
think CTA really has now picked up on that, and it's very much a part of who they are.
yeah, another shout out for arts equity.
Exactly, exactly. And also, we want to say hi to our Fern, Adam, and I do want to report that the Fern's namesake and who gave it to us, Adam Kronenberg, is now has his podcast published, and it's called Pitched Sequence, and it's the story of the People's Baseball League and life lessons you can learn through baseball. So I will put the link out so that it'll be here in both the on Facebook, because I know many of you are watching this on Facebook, and on our YouTube channel. So feel free to subscribe if you're interested in baseball or life lessons, and share it out with your own networks of fellow listeners. So that's it. That's his podcast. And now we wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening in education nationally. Let's start with the big picture. So the big picture around the political candidates for president, the Democratic candidates anyhow, for president, is that the Network for Public Education has a project where they are looking at candidates through the lens of who they are in terms of their support, who their donors are, what their position is on vouchers, because in many states vouchers is a big issue. Vouchers are not an issue for us in California, but in many other states they are, and where they are with respect to their position on charter schools. And they're literally giving them a grade on each of these areas, and writing up and putting links into to where they are. So I'm going to put a link to that candidate project from the Network for Public Education in with our links, and I'll put it again on Facebook, and I'll put it again on Twitter, because we now have a Twitter page too, so that you can see it. And I really do suggest that you take a look at it, because it really can help inform your vote, and also inform the candidates, because if you have a candidate that you're interested in who hasn't taken a position or isn't strong enough, you can always contact their organization and see if we can move them to where they do get to where they see something as important, and understand that the charter industry, that people are viewing charters in particular differently than they have in the past.
Exactly, that's the call to action.
Right? That's the call to action.
For that level.
Then as far as the state goes, there's an update now on where we are with 1505 and 1507. And 1505 and 1507 are going to be voted on this week, and hopefully they will pass. The amendments are done. It's been printed. It should be. It may be voted on Monday or possibly Tuesday, but by the end of the week it should be. So I will continue to post all the updates, but it is also incumbent on people to go ahead and make sure your legislators, and I know everybody watching this probably has done this, but share it out with your network. So make sure your legislators know how important it is to pass 1505 and 1507 in order to maintain the health of our school districts.
Exactly. So I'm worried a little bit about the sort of ambiguity there in terms of the county, at the county level. So that's something we really have to watch and see. Maybe there's additional requirements or things that need to be to direction from our superintendent of public instruction. Maybe
Yes.
that would help
Yes.
with that ambiguity.
Right. So what that is about is the appeals process when it gets to the county. And as it's written right now, there is still an appeals process there, and the appeals process, the good news is the appeals process does consider financial impact. But there isn't a really clear formula of how to determine the financial
that.
impact.
Yeah,
And so hopefully that can become clearer. But that doesn't need to be in the bill right now.
Right.
And so we don't need to, it's just something to look at for the future and to brainstorm ideas and figure out what the most appropriate way is to create a formula for that so that everybody is clear and we can all.
And we do consider this a big win. This is a big win for us, and so the call to action, continue to support, ask, politicians to continue to support it. And
Absolutely.
so
And this is a huge win to CTA.
That's true.
Let's just say
that's true.
that without them, it would not have happened. CTA it was a political decision, right? And political is not a bad word. Political just means policy. This is a policy decision that had to be made by elected officials as to where California is going to go in terms of how it looks at charter schools and whether or not how they impact our public districts. And this is a giant step in the right direction.
Exactly. Yeah. Great.
So that's that. We wanted to talk a little bit about philanthropy.
Philanthropy. Yes. So we've been experiencing a lot of philanthropy in our district, and so I've been thinking about it a lot and how philanthropy is used. And one would think that philanthropy means someone's donating out of the goodness of their heart with no strings attached because they're supporting programs that you're doing. But in practice, when it comes down to it, it feels more like I'm giving you this money, but I'm going to ask you for some favors. And so that's the thing that bothers me about this, how for me, it's starting to make philanthropy a bad word, a dirty word, because I'm very suspicious when I hear that word now, especially in terms of our school district. And that's really unfortunate. I'm very, I'm just very concerned about that, about how even community, or not just our district, the community out there, taking money thinking, oh, how wonderful, how generous this person is to give us all of these resources. But in reality, that there's many times there are strings attached, and then you're asked to write an email or go to a meeting or support something that is connected to this person in another way. So it's like maybe they have a corporation and so they want that vendor to, it's just so confusing sometimes to know what the conflict of interest there might be. And it's just covered up so well. You don't know. Like, who can you trust? What's true? And following the money, as they say, and what's dark money, and how it's being used. And so I'm a little distressed about that. What I'm seeing around me, what I'm seeing in different organizations that are wonderful, wonderful organizations, maybe being co-opted, for want of a better word. But that's just my thoughts in general, and hopefully, I don't know what the answer is to that, because it's such a big issue.
It is a big issue. But we talked a little bit about this last time. This is a printout of the executive summary from a California Charter Schools Associate, CCSA, and the California Charter Schools Advocacy Group that came from this document release, a Freedom of Information Act release that was done in Los Angeles. And the information here came from Green Dot, and it was I don't know, 5,000, many pages of emails and documents that came from Green Dot. And part of them were documents that show very, very clearly that some organizations that are supported by philanthropic groups, big donors who have contributed to lots of different things, try to confuse people, right? And really, very intentionally. I mean, they have it's not like, oh, it's a mistake that you're confused. No, it's just very intentional. So what they're saying is, in order to hide the fact that what they're doing is destructive to public education, because it is draining the money from it, and you can't make believe it's not, because it is. It's the reason that districts have gone into near bankruptcy. In order to hide that fact, they deliberately choose to align themselves with other groups that have very moral public purposes. And really, they're hijacking those groups.
Yes.
Deliberately.
Yeah, and didn't you say you found where it said one of the strategies is to infiltrate social justice organizations?
Absolutely.
So this is not just, oh, that's just your opinion, Katsuala. No, we have proof.
It's here.
That's why it's so depressing. It's true. It is happening.
You read it through, right?
I did.
It's here.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I know. But it's here. And the first time I read this, I thought, my goodness.
It's proof.
It's proof. So anybody who is concerned really needs to know that these are very specific strategies, and they've worked.
Yes. Oh, they've worked very well. We see it in our community. Absolutely.
And that is the reason we got to 1505 and 1507, right? Because these are the kinds of strategies that move forward. That's the reason why California has the education crisis that it had, and you can't call it something else. And California's not alone. I mean, the more I got into this, and then you see, I'm posting it all the time now on Facebook, that Ohio has the problem, Arizona has a problem. It's a national issue, right? Where public education, where these are very large donors, very large, and let's talk about that for a minute. Philanthropy is, somebody made a lot of money somewhere, somehow. And maybe it's back in their family history, so that it's very old money. Maybe it's very new tech money, like the Gates money, or the Dell money, or the Scully money. Any of those folks have this money. This money gives them power. And that's simply the fact. And it allows them to do things, to put themselves in a position where other people are dependent upon them. And what a public education system needs to do is never be dependent on donors. That is the last thing you need to be. Public education is dependent on the public in the community. They are community members, and who pay taxes, who are our own citizens, and not folks who are then going to be bought off by donors who use their money and their power. And that is what's happened. That is what's happened. And that's what we need to just keep talking about it, but we have to keep calling it out, or it's going to continue to happen. Right? 1505 and 1507 are the first steps forward. And the folks taking the steps are the unionized teachers.
Absolutely.
They did it. There wasn't somebody else who did it. And they had to do it in order to respond. What they're responding to is this push from these parallel organizations. And those organizations are nonprofits. I'm not saying they're for-profit. They are nonprofits, but nonprofits that have a huge amount of philanthropy, of this donor money supporting them.
Yeah. And you were talking about how they get rich. Here in California, you know, those corporations and those individuals got rich, but their workers didn't. They either stayed the same or even lost in terms of
Right.
living wages, etc. So that's one way they made their money. Then they turn around and say, oh, I'm going to donate all this, so they get their tax break. That's another way they make their money. And then they give that money to people they can then control for other organizations or their own corporations to make more money. I mean, that's really what it's about. Nobody is giving any of this money free with no strings attached. There's absolutely a purpose and reason for them to give this money away. So,
Right. If they wanted to do that, I mean, one of the things you could do that would just be straight out, just saying, I want to support education. And this has been done. There have been folks that have done this, where you go to Donors Choose
yes.
and just say, I'm going to fund everybody who's got something in there.
Yes.
Right? And the Bank of America, an heir to the Bank of America fortune, had they did that once for California. On one day, they funded every California ask and Donors Choose.
Wow.
Somebody else did it in Stephen Colbert did it. Everybody who asked in South Carolina, he did one day. He just did all of them. So those are not done for self-aggrandizement or there's that's philanthropy.
Yes.
But if you're going to run these other things and look for ways to save money and have these special accounts and have these managers around your accounts, you are running a parallel organization and you are assuming power that you shouldn't assume.
Yeah, and that's not the philanthropy. What
So-
do we call it? Vulture philanthropy?
Vulture philanthropy, they're
Vultures circling our district as a cash cow, and they circle and we have to be ever vigilant about
That's really the case. So I'm going to link this once again. So if you want to see what we're talking about, this is the executive summary of this meeting that had all of the strategies laid out, and there were some, and also these emails that went back and forth from a lobbyist to the superintendent of LAUSD, who's also involved in it.
He's in it too.
Because he was hired by them. So I mean, this is all
Exactly.
it's sort of an incestuous thing. But we just need to understand that what we're talking about here is very specifically dangerous to our students, and that's why it had to be stopped.
Yeah.
That's why it had to be stopped, and it needs to be recognized throughout the country in terms of everybody nationally realizing it's a big problem. Privatizing our public education is a big problem. And between two teachers is
We're going to do our part
here to do.
to get the information out, because it really is. Those are the two things that we get asked. Where can I get more information, and what can I help? What can I do to help? So that's what we're here for. We're going to try to do that for you.
Exactly. So keep your fingers crossed that this all goes through, and that we continue to build stronger and stronger alliances with folks, so that people understand. I mean, the important thing is to have the transparency and understand what's happening. Now you have another.
Well, I wanted to share. I've been always concerned since I've been on the board with the mental health of our students, our families, etc. We have a lot of interest, trauma issues, and there's a certification you can get from California State University East Bay. It's for teachers, in order to get a certification in be a trauma-informed educator. That is a professional who understands how to support children who have experienced trauma and adapt the school environment to successfully meet their academic, social, emotional, and behavioral needs. In addition, CIE certification ensures the professional has built a strong foundation of self-care and awareness. Trauma-informed educators are recognized at their schools as leading examples of best practices for supporting children with trauma in general education, special education, or non-public school setting. So to me, what I see here, very much like we have a reading specialist and we have a math specialist, how about a teacher or two who've got this certification, they become our trauma-informed specialists, and then they help create environments and classrooms that can address those needs for
Right.
students. So that's why I saw this. I want to talk more about it at another time.
This is a really smart strategy. I think that one of the things that we really do need to do is build our team and have the wisdom be in our full-time people to make them stronger. So then you don't become you don't become reliant on, first of all, on donors who are going to give you a little program to help you out, right? You don't become reliant on that. Instead, you've built the knowledge and the proficiency within your own system.
And the instructor said that she's interested in doing a training of trainers so that teachers will train other teachers. And she worked in our district. And there are actually here about a half a dozen or so teachers who have gone through the certification. So I'm really thrilled about that.
I think that's very exciting.
Yeah, visit some of those schools and some of those teachers, and we'll tell you more about it.
There you go.
All right.
So, thank you all. Keep watching our Facebook and Twitter pages for more information on what's happening with the bills. We also now have a daily, Between Two Teachers daily, and who knows, we may have a newsletter soon.
Oh, that's right. We're going to have a newsletter. That's true. Okay.
We'll see. Till next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.